So after I had approached Mrs. Spaziano to be my mentor and deciding to write and direct a one-act play, the next step was actually writing it. And so I remembered I had written a 10-page play from when I was in my intro to theater class freshman year with Mrs. Spaziano, and I thought, why don't I just expand that play, make it a little bit more comedic, and set it in a decade that I love, the 80s.
So for the show, I wanted to keep the set as minimalistic as possible. And so the show mainly had 3 sets. The first was Penny's bedroom, which we opened up with, which was simply just a beanbag chair and a telephone. So then, as you can see here in this picture, we had the hallway set, which was a moving bulletin board and 2 cardboard lockers. And with certain scenes, we would put whatever we needed in the hallway. Like in the first big ensemble scene, which is scene 3, the Kindness Club is putting up their mural. So we have the mural on the bulletin board, and they have their paint bucket and their table. And then our second main set was the classroom scenes, in which we used the same bulletin board but the other side, which was a chalkboard, and we had a set of around 10 desks with the folding desktop. So to kind of move it more towards the 80s feel despite being such a minimalist set, we decided that props was a good way to also give it a more 80s feel. We actually, for Penny's bedroom and her telephone, the telephone was actually my mentor, Mrs. Spaziano's childhood phone. And we also used a transparency slip and an overhead projector to give it a more 80s feel. And so continuing on that, we also, after being adjudicated, decided that our transitions were a little bit too long between scenes, so we decided to put a bunch of 80s music over each set change to make it more fun and to cover up the longer set changes. So then, similar to the music and set pieces, the costumes truly gave the 80s feel. My mentor and I were very excited to be able to work with costuming the 80s and especially playing with high school stereotypes. So we were able to effectively dress everyone in an 80s garb while also making sure we kept within our budgetary needs. So obviously the big hair and the bright lipstick and makeup were all done very well by the cast, and we costumed them depending on what stereotype they were. So as you can see, these are the cheerleaders. And so they wore their warm-up costumes to school. We all got custom-made Star-Nosed Mole t-shirts, and they had their big hair and their leg warmers. Next, we have the jocks, the football boys. I believe it was the characters of Kyle and Brock who wore Letterman jackets, and Sawyer, who was another football player, wore sweatbands. So we have the cheerleaders in their cute sweaters. We have Emmett Van Leeren ensemble wearing a fully bright colored tracksuit. We have a band kid and another ensemble member dressed in 80s wear. And so, in the end, I learned a lot about being able to express my creative vision, but also keeping accurate to the time period. And I also learned a lot about budgeting a show and how you can still correctly costume a show using so many resources, but still keeping within a budget.